Well, good morning. Let's see if everything's working here. As usual, I'll probably need you guys to tell me how things are sounding. I'm trying to use the new YouTube studio format, and you know what? They say they make all these improvements, and really all it is just to frustrate you and make it so that you have to change your routine and all of that, and it gets kind of complicated sometimes. It shouldn't be, but they're always saying that it's better than it was before, and I'm not so sure that's actually true, as you can tell. So at any rate, here we are today, and I'm going to check and make sure that, it looks like everything's working okay. Hope you like the background today. Yeah, it looks like everything's just fine. So you'll have to pardon me for doing this. I could have done a preview or an unlisted and do a test, but I just figured I'd do it right now. So we're 5x5. Wonderful. Thank you. Welcome, everyone, as you come in. Like I said, it's hard to believe. Today is the 14th of April, 2020. I'm Roy Potter, and thanks for coming. I don't really have a specific thing to talk about this morning. The only reason why I've come on is because I figured that with everything that's happening and some of the things I've been saying in the last few days, that it might be appropriate just to kind of chill out a little bit, try to talk about some things, let you all ask some questions. So we'll definitely go to chat early on this morning. I'll just bring up a few things, and they're not going to necessarily be, they're not going to be earth-shattering or anything like that in most situations. By the way, yes, I've got it. There it is right there. And it's becoming more and more true every day. And I guess that's a good place to start, because you see a lot of people talking now about Trump claiming that he can do things as president, which he really can't under the Constitution, not even in times of war. He can. He has a lot of power, but he has to work within the Constitution, and there's a big battle going forward now on what that is. And I think the best people the best person to see on that, two of them actually, of course I've mentioned them before, are Mark Pantano and of course Chris Hall. But a lot of people say, well, Roy, you were calling for him to invoke the Insurrection Act and all of that. Well, yeah, I did, because in times of rebellion or invasion, he has that authority under the Constitution to suspend habeas corpus if necessary. Not the Bill of Rights. And it's a suspension of habeas corpus. It's not a total canceling out of it. What the purpose of it is to give what Barr was really after. Of course, he would have taken it further to disappearing a lot of us just because we disagree with the government. But it's because the anticipation is that first, the courts may not be in session, as Barr said. And second of all, you could be talking about huge amounts of people. And, we would hope that they're going to be the deep staters when and if they ever use that. But it's looking more and more to me that that's not going to be the case, that people like Clinton, Obama, etc. Obama's, as far as I'm concerned with this whole thing with giving the Wuhan virus to China and all of that, at this point I think it is treason. And anyone who now helps China, Rich Higgins, who I had a battle with last night on Twitter, if anybody was following that, Rich Higgins says, and I have a great deal of respect for him, don't think I don't. That's just, two guys duking it out and then, going and having a drink together. So, at any rate, he says that we've actually been at war with China, not that we declared it, but that China did a year ago. Actually, at least a year ago. I think he said it was in March or May of 19 when they made these overtures. So, knowing who, and we do know, and there's no reason for Trump not to know, who engaged in this thing with China, who did these subversions, like the Harvard professor that they finally arrested, and there are a lot of other people they could go after, then Trump can take some actions, but he can't force, like the big discussion now is, well, the governors. He has control over the governors. No, he doesn't. No, he started this train down the road, and they took advantage of it, just like they did with the red flag laws. Okay? They were given an inch, and they took a mile. And you're going to see that all the time. And so that's a problem. Now you can go downstairs. Want to investigate. German Shepherd. Fierce German Shepherd, but likes kids. Okay. So there's been that argument going back and forth about exactly how much power the president can wield, and we have to keep. I remember Barr talking about in the interview with Laura Ingraham. Trump believes in federalism, and that's why he's given the governors so much leeway. And then all of a sudden, it's like Trump didn't get the memo, and he turns around and he says, "Oh, the president has all this power; he can do things." And unless he's planning on becoming a dictator, which is interesting because what have the Democrats been accusing him of all this time? That he's a criminal, that he's a traitor, that he's going to be a dictator, he's going to take over the government. And we're all back here saying, no, that's not going to happen. Do you see what's happening here? And that's why I think all this has been planned and scripted, that this whole thing has been a delaying tactic until they could get us to this point. Because we would defend him with our dying breath, even if they were right. It became political. It wasn't. Remember what I said. We can't be a cult of personality. We must be based upon principle, even if it's our guy that we have to, apply the principle to, and sometimes against. So I won't get into that any deeper than that. I do want the country to open up. I find that this whole thing is ridiculous, unless, of course, even if I'm saying the virus is real, just like I've said, the flu, the TB, which have much more dangers right now than this thing. Could it mutate and all that? Yeah, but they're definitely use it to clamp us down, and it's happening all over the world, which tells me that this thing is being used for other reasons. The real reasons are it could be the collapse of the financial system because it was going to go down anyway, and Trump needed an excuse to do that. And people say, stop blaming Trump, stop blaming Trump. Who else are you going to blame? You're going to blame just the Federal Reserve? You're going to blame just the Democrats? You're going to blame just the deep state? You can't. He thinks he has power to tell the governors what to do. Order them. Well, if he thinks that, why isn't he ordering his DOJ, which is directly underneath him, to do their job? And the FBI, why isn't he firing Wray? The guy is just totally inconsistent. So like I said, I've given up on him until I see a public repentance and him go down the right course. And one of the big things is, since he started this train down the road on the Wuhan Virus quarantining and business, then I'm sorry, but I got to see some positive action before I trust him. I think my dog here wants out to take care of business. You know what I mean? Give me about 30 seconds. All right. Thank you for your indulgence on that. You know how it goes. I wouldn't want to have to hold my bladder. I've done it. I'll tell you a story about that. How would you like to hear a story before we get into anything more? So I was at Fort Ord, California. I was a platoon leader. It was right after I got commissioned in the 571st MP Company. It was a STRAF MP Company, which means Strategic Army Force. We had to be at Redcon 1 all the time. That's another story. But at any rate, so they were having a combined arms and joint exercise both at 29 Palms, California, which involved Marines, Army, Air Force. It was a big exercise. right down in the 29 Palms Desert. In July, as I recall, I mean, it was incredibly hot. But my job was as the overall convoy commander. From Fort Ord alone, we had something like 1,300 vehicles making this trek down there. I'm just talking about land vehicles. I'm not talking about aircraft. But I was the convoy commander for that and for contingents from Camp Roberts, from Presidio of San Francisco, Presidio of Monterey, and some reserve units. It was a huge thing, several thousand vehicles. And so at any rate, we did that, and I was down there. It was amazing how hot it was. And I had to go back to Fort Ord. And I can't remember how I got back there. I may have flown. I don't remember right now. But I do remember that when it was time for me to go back to start the reverse maneuver, the reverse coming back to the posts, I got on this. It was a twin-engine, four-seater aircraft. Not a helicopter, a regular prop, dual prop. And, you know, I know how these things are. I mean, helicopters and these military planes, you get in and they vibrate like crazy. Sometimes you wonder how they fly. And so, you know, I took care of business before I went to go get on the plane, you know, to make sure that everything was fine. And I tried not to drink too much before I got on the plane. But danger, danger. We're in the air for about, I'd say maybe 15 minutes because it's probably only about a 45-minute flight, hour tops, going from the Fort Ord airfield to the 29 Palms airfield, something like that. And it was only like 15 minutes into the flight, and man, I was in danger zone. You know, it was extreme difficulty. And I finally couldn't, because they don't have any way to take care of yourself on it. Maybe for the pilot and co-pilot, but not for the passenger. So I took out my canteen. I know this is going to really gross some people out. But I took out my canteen and I drank it. I mean, what am I going to do, right? I really guzzled it down, and then I used it, to take care of business. And in the process, I remember the co-pilot, he turns around and he looks at me because he caught me right in the middle of this. And he just got this big grin and he shook his head. Yeah, we understand. Did I use the canteen again? Yeah, of course. I rinsed it out and cleaned it out. But after we landed at 29 Palms, the temperature had gotten even worse. And I remember one of the company commanders down there said, here, you're supposed to take these salt pills. You're going to be here for a day or two now. So, the medics want you to take these salt pills. Bad idea. So it was probably 120 degrees, I'd say easy. And I took those salt pills, and oh man, I got sick. Bad idea. We find out, that's not a good idea these days. I think they know better. It's better just to drink lots of water. Anyway, that's my story about my poor dog, having to... He couldn't wait anymore and started whining. Show you, it happens to us too, of course. Okay. Next order of business. Let's talk about Virginia Governor Northam. Governor Northam, of course, he passed those laws and signed it, the anti-Second Amendment laws. We knew that was coming. Where's Trump on that? That's something Trump could act on. Absolutely, because it violates the U.S. Constitution. That's where the problem is. Somebody brought up the other day on Twitter, I saw that actually it was Robert Barnes, the attorney, and I was really surprised to see this post, because what he said is that the president can go into the states and force governors to do something, and he used the situation with Governor Wallace of Alabama, who was shutting out the blacks from the schools and had the separate buses and fountains and all that. You remember that? Well, most of you probably don't. I do. And Robert Barnes said, well, that shows right there the president has that power. Well, no. The president was, at that point in time, was saying, Governor, you are violating the rights of your citizens. You are violating their rights under the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, freedom of assembly, freedom of speech, all of that. And So the president went in there to secure the rights of the people. He took an oath to do that. Okay? Now, under the same idea, you look at the situation today, and there is no... If Trump was going to order the governors to do anything in response to this train wreck that he's instigated here, and I know Fauci said there was no problem at first, and then it was all a setup, I understand, or it was a very clever way for us to ignore what Trump does that isn't right, and it gets convoluted, but I really believe that that's what a lot of this is about, because it doesn't make any sense why he would even keep Fauci on at this point unless he was providing that cover for Trump. But at any rate, so in the governors, for instance, when they're kicking people out of parks, when they're arresting them for different things. We could talk about all of this. You know what's going on, right? When they violate your rights, there's nothing in the Constitution that says your rights are suspended when there's a national emergency. At that point, in fact, they become even more critical. And I think Chrisanne Hall and Mark Pantano would agree with this. So Robert Barnes, I wasn't sure where he was coming from. It seemed like to me he was mixing apples and oranges. I'll let those lawyers battle that out. But the fact of the matter is, if the states are violating your rights, the president does have a right to intervene at that point as the country's top law enforcement official. And through his DOJ, not the military, even though Eisenhower used the military in that situation, but at least warn the governors that they're violating the rights of their citizens and that they risk a suit from the federal government or law enforcement action through the DOJ, of course, or even military situation to save the rights of the people. And I would go along with that. However, that's not how Trump is using it now. As a matter of fact, he's let the governors pretty much walk all over us in this thing. And that is his fault. And just like like I said a few minutes ago, he set the red flag situation in motion and now does nothing to stop the infringements on the Second Amendment. And Barr won't do that because Barr is against the First, Second, and Fourth Amendments. I saw somebody the other day, say things are moving along. Barr said he's going to go after, the mayors and the governors and going to take them down for breaking up these religious services. No, Barr isn't. Barr was speaking in legalese. He's not going to do anything. And if he does, it's going to be a letter. It's not going to be anything dramatic. So you might as well just sit down and relax because they're not going to do that. I am thoroughly convinced at this point, as I've said, that President Trump, and he may, and in fact, with the seal being gone and some of the other things that have happened, he may well have been taken out of some command situation through either a coup, a quiet coup, or he was complicit for all this from the beginning, which is what I believe at this point. With all of the evidence, I believe that he was a placekeeper, he was a pacifier, he was there to keep us from rising up and taking some kind of action. And he did a very good job. He did an #1 job. He deserves an Oscar for what he's done and continues to do. Okay, so Northam also, not just the Second Amendment stuff, but he's also, and of course, the infanticide, which that alone the president could act on. But the FBI never goes after any real bad people. It always goes after either the competition or people like you and I, and we're going to talk about that again in a minute too. The other thing Northam did is he signed an order that all public places, or all places open to the public, bathrooms, powder rooms, ladies' rooms, whatever, they're all open to transgenders. Isn't that just fine? This is why I say we're headed for destruction. These kinds of things are designed to corrupt the people and to cover under authority that these debased and very evil things have political cover and cover under law. I won't say the word. I'm going to behave today. But you remember, the king had, in old times, when a couple got married, A lot of these kings who were corrupt would have prima nocte, right? First choice for the night. In other words, a new bride they would take and do their thing with them before the new husband got a chance to. Very, very debased, corrupt, evil. Well, there's the old saying about, F-U-C-K that it means, and I know this isn't exactly true. It actually comes from the name of a bull, but, fornication under command of the king. So if the king says it's okay, then you can do it, right? Well, that's how our law works, isn't it? It's illegal unless the government says it's okay to do, right? In other words, we're in a Napoleonic type of law situation now, not a constitutional, where the people have the right to do anything except those things that are expressly prohibited, as I've talked about before. So at any rate, who is the real target with all of this that Trump has been through? Who is the real target? Was it Trump? Was Trump the real target? Or was he just the centerpiece to keep you focused on him and feeling sorry for him, while all these draconian measures have been taken to remove your rights all around you? And now this big move, total surveillance, IDs, and all this, which I'm not going to get into in any great detail, but these are the same types of things that Hitler and Stalin and Mao used. And here we are. What makes us different? What did we fight for 2 centuries? For this? As Alex Jones said yesterday, I caught a bit of it. He went maybe a little bit to the extreme. He said that Trump should get out death squads, death teams, and what he's saying is using Delta Force to take out these treasonous people in our government who have endangered us. But one of those needs to be this whole. I'm not saying again that the disease is not a disease, but even being what it is, obviously it's being used to control us. So the real target was never Trump. The real target has been the American people all along, and it continues to be, as we see every day. So I wanted to bring that up as well. And then, of course, there's the situation with Maria Abramovich. How many of you out there saw? I couldn't believe it myself. I really couldn't. How many of you out there saw the Microsoft commercial where Maria Abramovich, who is she calls herself an artist, but she's the one that, is an Aleister Crowley figure, follower. And so Microsoft had this commercial on virtual reality. How many of you saw that? Probably quite a few of you, right? So Marina Abramovich, I always say Maria, but it's just Marina Abramovich. Microsoft's telling you who they're following. That's exactly what that is. Gates is telling you what he is. Now, people say, well, he left his post. Oh, come on. You think he left his influence? You know that he has some type of controlling influence on Microsoft. You're kidding yourself if you think he stepped down completely. No. So now we see what we've all been talking about, that there's this AI god, that they're trying to bring in a worship of the AI, and whoever is going to stand in that place. I don't know if it's, it could very well be, was it Elon Musk that said, he was talking about the brain implants that would tie you into the AI? Some of these people have these empty eyes now. I'm not sure Gates does, but he might just be able to put on a little better show. Does he have this implant? Is he hooked up to the AI? I don't know. I'm not saying he couldn't go there, but at any rate, he is pushing a very evil system, and we all know that. And so this commercial with Marina Abramovich, who does the death stuff, the drinking of blood, the invited Podestas and all of them over for their spear cooking, for the breast milk and the sperm and the blood and all that mixed in with the food or whatever. Pretty nasty stuff, and she's the one that pushes that. And here, Bill Gates and Microsoft are using her to advertise their new virtual reality. Isn't that crazy? Moving along, China is inundating us with propaganda. Now remember, it was the U.S. government in NDAA 2012, 2013, somewhere in there, that said it was okay for the CIA and the intelligence community to use propaganda against the American people. And then in a subsequent, like a year later, in the NDAA, they funded it. This is your Congress that's supposed to be protecting your rights. So now what's happening is that China, which is allied with our intelligence community, a good portion of it, there's this war, as I've often said, in the government, and it's several sides. It's the wicked against the wicked. You have those who are on the Israeli side, who are trying to take control of things, AIPAC and Pelosi and those kinds of people. But they're playing both ends. They've been doing these investments in China, selling us out to China, and that's why Alex Jones was saying yesterday that these people need to be arrested and immediately hung. Give them a trial first. You have to do that. But if they resist during the raids, obviously that changes the situation a little bit. But anyway, getting sidetracked. So China has been involved in a huge propaganda campaign. They have been at war with us for decades, in fact. Nothing's changed. People send our technology over there and put us at a disadvantage, put all our manufacturing over there. And Trump is right on that. But then again, like I said, why is it that our rights always have to be abrogated in order for them to fight these enemies, be it an invisible enemy of a virus or China or anybody else? That's always the game. And so we have this propaganda going. This came out, I'm going to show it to you. This came out on a promotion on Twitter. Some of you may have seen this. Let me put it up here and see if you can see it. You see that? I'm sorry about the window there. There we go. Can you see that, what it says? Get to know the real China with Lu Xin. These things should not be happening on Twitter, Facebook, or any American media at this point. That's subversion. Where's the FCC? Why hasn't it gone after Jack here? Why hasn't it gone after Zuckerberg and whatever other social media are allowing these things to happen? It proves that China does have us. And it was right, at least on the surface, what Trump was saying, to throw China off of us, bring back our manufacturing, our pharmaceutical manufacturing, whatever. I agree with all that, but I don't know how serious he is, other than, Trump I'm talking about, other than it's these two factions, these two mafiosos that are fighting for control of the world government right now, and Trump is actually one of those that's trying to come out on top, and not for our benefit. Or he would understand the Constitution, our rights. He wouldn't have tried to take away our Second Amendment. He wouldn't be failing to defend us in our First Amendment, in our Fourth Amendments, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And he wouldn't be talking about overthrowing the authority of governors who have rights under the 10th Amendment. All right, there's some real problems with Trump, and I've recognized since the day he said that the Clintons were good people. I haven't trusted him since then. I have bounced back and forth, hoping that, after he got through the learning curve, he would do the right thing. But as I've said all along, I fear that he is actually this placater to put us to sleep until they can get their new world order in place. And I feel bad for Alex Jones that he continues to give Trump cover. Everything he says about what the New World Order does, he has a caveat that poor Trump, he's fighting the deep state. He's doing the best he can. And I just don't believe that anymore. And that was kind of the disagreement between myself and Rich Higgins last night, where the breaking point came was what, I'm from the old school. I was taught air-land battle and those things. I understand unrestricted warfare, which is what China's over. But my point to Rich Higgins was that Trump either he doesn't understand these things, or he needs to have an understanding of the number of attacks that are happening, and he probably does, but he's just not responding correctly in my estimation. And I think Rich agrees with me on that. But he's trying to. So I was using the term airland battle, and he says, "Well, you don't even know what that means." Lots of laughs. And I went, "Well, I taught it. What are you talking about? I taught airland battle. Come on, Rich." Of course I understand. My point is that we've got a problem and that we're not handling it the right way. That the American people are in fact the target, not even China. China's not going to invade our west coast. They're already here. Okay, they might, once they've totally subverted us, yeah. And I talked about the 1800s, the writings in the 1800s talking about using China, the heathen Chinese, as they call them, to throw the government down and to occupy the country. Well, they're here. We saw the operatives putting the disease on computers and things like that. We know they're here. The one lady who was buying up all the masks, and that's just the overt stuff that you can see. There's the technology that's the takeover of our institutions. Hollywood, we've all talked about that. What's being done about it? Nothing. Not really. Not really at all. So that was my point. That if we're at war, we need to take some serious actions, and starting with our own people that have sold us out. But you see, they're not going to do that. They're using it to come after us. That's what I said. Trump was the figurehead, but what they're really after is the American people that want to sustain and honor the principles of liberty. That's who they're really after. So we have the Chinese propaganda that's being allowed in our country right now, which shouldn't be happening. And I want to come back to that later. I got into a little tiff with a person over the National Biodefense Strategy. I understand, that these things are in place. I used to write these plans, be involved in them, and I know that. But these things they're necessary, but they always have little things in them that give you some concern. So I put out some information on Twitter the other day, and I'm not going to talk about it other than, go to Twitter if you have Twitter, or go to whitehouse.gov and look up the National Biodefense Strategy from the president. Most of it's going to be innocuous. I mean, some of it's common sense. But think about how it's being used today. Again, the American people become the target. It's always that way. I'm not going to go back over that again. We also know, of course, that the numbers on the sickness, the Wuhan virus, are being manipulated. Fauci and Bricks I used to call her Birx. I mean, that's her name. I used to call her Bricks. I still slip up. There was an innuendo there calling her Bricks, but I'll be nice and I'll call her by her real name, Birx. And we know that those numbers are being skewed again to scare people. I can't believe what I'm seeing when I go out. I just can't. I don't wear a mask. I don't wear gloves. I take my vitamins and I try to eat right. I get a little exercise when I can. You're not supposed to even walk around out in Salt Lake anymore. Wyoming here, we can still walk around. But all the restaurants are closed. You go into a Maverick store, which I think most of you know what it is. It's a convenience store gas station. You can't take your own cup in there. You can't even get the cup out. They have to give it to you. Anyway, everything's just totally out of control. And again, it's not to protect any of us. It's to enslave us. And I recognize that right off the front when I called this thing a bioweapon before I had even heard the situation with the splicing in of the HIV delivery system and all that business, the chimeric stuff that we now are finding out about from the lab. And China even admitted that we gave it to them. Remember early on, if you all were following me right at the beginning of that, I said that it was being delivered. I could tell by the way it was being deployed that it was a bioweapon. I could tell. The way it didn't just fan out from one area over time, it skipped all over the world, and that's why I knew it was a bioweapon. Not a serious one. They could still be using that as the first wave of an attack to get us ready for the next bioweapon, which may be worse or who knows what. But, I said early on that it was a bioweapon, and that was something that I pointed out, and it's turned out that that's true. So we look at these things and we know that we're if you really take the big picture and you know that we're the target. All right, let's see what else we're going to talk about here. Oh, yes, still the numbers. So the numbers have been inconsistent. The models that they depended upon to enslave us have turned out to be wrong. And yet they're still pushing it, which again shows you that they're not going to admit they're wrong, that their agenda is the chips, the tracking systems, and the vaccines to cull the population. That's really what it's about. And we must stand against that. So Ramsey Paul, if any of you follow him on Twitter, this actually came out a few days ago, but it's still applicable to our situation. He was answering a guy who said that the numbers are accurate, that the virus, this is the guy that he's going to respond to. The virus deniers continue to compare the new coronavirus to the flu, which is an influenza, and mock people. Ramsey Paul, who I follow him, and I find him extremely intelligent. I don't know what he is. Is he a lawyer? Is he an attorney? A doctor? I'm not sure. But he's very, very common sense. And this was his answer. False. Teen Doomsday wants us to believe that 20,000 deaths from COVID-19 destroyed, and I'm going to say Wuhan Virus, destroyed the economy, but 80,000 deaths from the flu 2 years ago was not a big deal to the economy. The virus has not destroyed the economy and our liberties. The government has. Amen. Thank you, Ramsey Paul. There are some people on Twitter I just love to meet, and he's one of them. By the way, Ramsey Paul, I think you watch this. I got a sneaking suspicion. Where are you sitting on these patios at these restaurants? Where are you that they are allowing you to do that? Because you can't do that here. You can't do it in Salt Lake. You can't do it in Wyoming. You can't. Wyoming, the governor, because he wanted some of the money. We don't have a problem here. This is less than, unless they know that this thing is, they're getting ready to throw another bioweapon at us, but they still can't restrict us in our rights under that. That's ridiculous. And I'll stand to that forever. But he declared a national emergency, and then Trump recognized it, and so that gives money to Wyoming. I got to admit something about Wyoming. You all ready for this? Out of the 50 states, Wyoming has more people on the social welfare dole per capita than any other state. Did you know that? So this is just a money grab. It has nothing to do with taking care of the sick. The hospitals are empty. We already know that. Even on this supposed second wave we're supposed to get hit by, we're not. Some of the only bad areas, the worst areas are in, New York and L.A., and even in those areas, the hospitals still aren't filling up. They're dismantling the military hospitals that were put up. So this is about us. This is not even about controlling Trump or trying to manipulate the elections one way or another. This is taking advantage of Trump's declarations and reaction to this using Fauci, Bricks, and Gates. And Pence. I'm not letting Pence off the hook. Oh, no, I don't trust Pence. I never have. No, I don't. So it's about going after us. They have military police now in D.C. Did you see that? I'll show you this picture. This is on Twitter. Guy by the name of Gigi Sims. Thank you, Gigi. By the way, thank you for helping me last night. I appreciate that. I was a little upset, as you could tell, I think. I let it go. Gigi Sims replied to this J. Michael Waller. But what I want to show you, if you want to see, this is in D.C. at a park in D.C. I don't know if you'll be able to see that. Let's see if you can. You see that car there? You see that military police guy right there? You see that car with the green thing, the green emblem that says military police? They are enforcing civil law. I thought they couldn't do that. No, they can't do that. There's been no, they're not out there putting down an insurrection or anything. At least not against the enemy. They're being used against us to enforce their restrictions on our rights. That's what they're being used for, and this is what I feared. We have a very evil government, ladies and gentlemen, and they're turning on us. They've been against us for a long time, but this thing is not getting better. And I don't mind saying it. I can get attacked by anybody who wants to attack me. I really don't care. I'm not changing my tune. I'm never going back to trusting Trump until, and I've made this caveat, because I'm very aware of some situations that can occur with some of these leaders, that if they publicly repent in front of the whole world, and that's the stipulation, which he could do from the Oval Office on the web or whatever, repent and admit what's going on and then change course. Then and only then will I ever stand behind him again. Sorry, Gigi. Sorry, Nancy. All of you. That's the way it is. Okay, David Knight interviewed Ammon Bundy. You remember Ammon Bundy and the situation that happened in Bunkerville, Nevada with the standoff with the BLM. And you also remember they're taking over the wildlife refuge. And however you feel about those two things, just for your information if you didn't know, in opposition to demonstrate, in other words, to demonstrate against these draconian measures that the different governments are putting down. Ammon lives in Idaho right now, and he has for a couple of years. Actually, even prior to Malheur, I think he moved to Idaho. And the governor up there made a whole lot of Nazi type of health actions. Well, they are doing a demonstration. They're standing against it. And so Ammon continues to be on the forefront to stand up for the rights of the people. And I want to thank him for that. And I want to thank David Knight for interviewing him, David Knight from InfoWars, on this situation. So there are people that are pushing back, but we need the entire population to do it. Refuse these orders, revolt. And how do you revolt? I don't mean go out and start burning things. I mean, just don't comply and do it in mass. What are they going to do? They'll arrest a few of you to try to make an example of you. I'm waiting for them to get me when I'm out walking around. I'm sure now that I've said it, they probably will. These people get nasty. But, we stand up and we refuse to submit to these tyrannical edicts. I want to read this. This was also from an article that was written. I think it was out of Zero Hedge, and I don't have the name of it, so I'm going to ask that you pardon me for not giving the due credit to the authors. I'll just say it is apparently from Zero Hedge. It might also be from, it could be an InfoWars article or story by Greg Reese. Anyway, I didn't get the source, and I apologize for that, but I'm going to read this anyway because it's a quote. And this is what it says. From 1933 to 1945, Nazi Germany carried out a campaign to cleanse German society of individuals viewed as biological threats to the nation's health. Does this sound familiar? I pointed out some time ago that when HIV became such an issue, remember they said you can't ask somebody if they have HIV? California actually passed a law saying that, you don't have to tell somebody you have HIV before you have sex with them or contact. The HIV carriers were given all sorts of passes. Nothing draconian like we see with this Wuhan virus. Why? By design. It's selective enforcement. It's so that they can go after the people that they really want. And who is that again? Not Trump, you and I. Enlisting the help of physicians and medically trained geneticists, psychiatrists, and anthropologists, the Nazis developed racial health policies that began with the mass sterilization of genetically diseased persons. What do I mean by genetically diseased? The dissidents. At that time, of course, anybody who stood against the Nazi regime, primarily, they'll say Jews. Though there was others as well. And ended with the near annihilation of European Jewry. With the patina of legitimacy, remember what I said, the cover of law, the patina of legitimacy provided by racial science experts, medical tyranny. This is exactly what Stalin did as well. The Nazi regime carried out a program of approximately 400,000 forced sterilizations and over 275,000 euthanasia deaths that found its most radical manifestation in the death of millions of racial enemies. We're seeing that now working out in the United States. Don't kid yourself. Prepare, prep, pray, and stay out of the way as best you can. This is going to be hard to avoid, though, because they got the big guns, right? And it's always that kind of force that they resort to, and that's what they're preparing to do. Look what they took that guy off the bus for no mask. They arrested a former police officer out in the park with just his family. Remember that? They're not grabbing the homeless off the streets and trying to take care of that problem. No. They're going after the people themselves, the good American people. Don't you see this is a war by China, and the government is going along with it. They're not opposing China. They arrested that one Harvard professor. Have they gone after Obama? Have they gone after Hillary Clinton for their ties and what they've done with China? Hillary even admitted it. No, they're going after little people trying to live their lives under their God-given unalienable rights that are supposed to be protected by the government, not usurped. It tells you who they are. And I'm ashamed of police officers who go and assist in this evil, seditious conduct. And that's what it is. And of course, what is it? Just like at Nuremberg, we were ordered to do it. We were just doing our job. That's why we had people take the oaths to the Constitution, that they would honor the principle over the personalities that control them. Yeah, there's dangers in that. You refuse an order, you're going to be brought up and investigated, but then, at least you held your principles. You can look at yourself in the mirror. I talked about that the other day. Okay, I'm going to end on this, and then I said we were going to go to chat earlier, and I started going along too far. My oldest son is so tuned in spiritually. It's just, it's an absolute blessing and amazement to me. And this is what he sent to me in a text yesterday. He says, I think that I understand why the children of disobedience use us, the children of the kingdom. What he's talking about, go back and read Genesis. Remember, Cain was a farmer. That was the crux of what he was doing. He was planting, he was growing. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but that the commandment was that you use a lamb without blemish for your sacrifice to God. Some people say, oh, that's terrible. Well, we're killing millions, maybe billions of animals a year for food. So look at this thing in the historical and logical thing, okay? Because you would kill a lamb, but then you'd be able to eat it, okay? And you would be able to offer up a portion of it in the fire that you didn't eat. And you know what it usually was? Certain of the entrails, but the fat. God took the fat. Isn't that interesting? The part you shouldn't eat, right? So actually, there's some really interesting things going on there. But anyway, so he continues and he says, so you have Cain growing, and you have Abel who actually offered the proper sacrifice in the lamb, right? This is what he says. God told Cain that the earth, after Cain killed Abel, and then Cain was put under a curse, God told Cain that the earth would not yield its fruit to him or his posterity. Do you see where this is going? Nor could he or the children of disobedience yield anything. And in other words, they use us to produce for them because they cannot do it themselves. Who are they? The bankers, the loan sharks. I don't mean your local loan shark. I'm talking about the elites, the royalties, the nobility, the corporate heads, the CEOs. Apparently, this curse, if you can believe this or not, I don't really care. I'm just pointing out a principle here. These people can't produce anything on their own. They don't have the smarts. They're cursed. Maybe they can't even make a garden grow, although I'm not very good at that either. But the point is that they cannot produce anything. The earth will not give of its strength because they're under this curse. So they use us to do all the work. We got to change that. It's going to be a hell of a fight to try to change it. But we got to change that. Okay. I've yacked enough for now. Let's go to chat. And I'm going to start at the bottom right where we are now. I apologize for missing everybody up front. Edelson James, first one I see. Everyone needs to be ready to say, I do not consent. Absolutely. Absolutely. Above that, the rough edge, Swallow Swell, said the people will give up their guns because the government has nukes. Yeah, and they're also going to use this food thing to do it too. That's where it'll eventually, they're not going to come house to house, at least not the most of us. Most of us, the real dissidents, they probably will. But, the ones who've been public. But the rest of us, they're gonna say, when all the food runs out, which is starting to happen now, not just the supply lines, but the actual food starting to run out. If you don't know, all planned. Get yourself. They don't want to sell you seeds. You better go get some seeds from a farmer's market or farmer's supply store or something. Do something. For some reason or other, the chap says it can't. Chat's been disabled. Oh, I didn't do that. So YouTube has stopped the chat. Unable to connect to chat. Please try again later. Guess what, ladies and gentlemen? At least on my end, they disconnected the chat. They don't want you to be talking to each other or to me. Isn't that interesting? Yeah, there it is right there. I've noticed it hasn't moved. I don't know how long it's been not moving. The last thing that I see here is from Edelson James, where everyone needs to be ready to say, I do not consent. So they've cut off your ability to chat for some reason. I didn't do that. Let me go to the top of this thing and see if there is. No, I didn't change it. So it's happened. It's happened up the line. Wow. There we go. I've been having trouble on Twitter. I think a lot of people have been saying, hey, Twitter's been slow. And a lot of this, I suspected it was because of, so many people are home. Even in this area with the upgrade that we've done, we still run into some problems. This isn't a local problem. This has been stopped at YouTube. Okay, so I apologize for that. Maybe they knew I was about ready to go to your, I don't know how long it hasn't been running because I don't have a time on here. But apparently they've shut down your ability to chat with me. Man, I tell you what. All right. Well, let me just go up the answer some of your other questions here. Yeah, Mike Guyver, you're right. Why do they say Jews when they were killing Christians? Too. They were killing anybody that didn't submit to them. Okay, and you're right. It wasn't just Jews. It was Christians too. You're right. I know that. I think most people who have looked at this understand that now. Yeah, I think AI is definitely in control now, and apparently it is my estimation, as I talked about a few days ago, Frozen Marauder, that somebody has come through the CERN into this dimension, into this, through this interdimensional travel. I don't think it's aliens from another world, from outer space kind of thing. Or it's somebody like, I'm not saying it's Soros or one of the Rothschilds, I don't know who it is, but apparently somebody is now come into place and has been plugged into the AI and is using it to become the god of the earth. Again, it could be this interdimensional being, it could be a possession by this interdimensional being of either a silicon replicant or an actual human being who is submitted to it. Yeah, I'm not sure. But I do believe that they are here now and they're doing it. Oh, refresh. Okay. You know who you are. Thank you. I will try to do that here. Let me see. How do I do that? Well, you know what? I'm going to hold off on doing that because I've been going on for an hour anyway. Okay, and you know who you are that just contacted me. I'm in the new studio here right now. And honestly, it's so different than the old YouTube studio that I'm not really sure where to do it. So I will find that out when we're done today. Okay, so pardon me, but thank you, as always, for everything that you do. Thank you so much. Okay, and let's see what else we've got here. Actually, it's really incredible. There are people I have so much respect for, and that they would give me even the time of day is very humbling. It's very, very humbling. Very good point, Woogie One. This goes along with prep, pray, stay out of the way. He or she says everyone find an old CB radio or get, if you can. I think you can have a private radio. This may have changed in the last few years, so don't hold me to this. On your own frequency, as long as it doesn't transmit outside the legal bandwidth for these other types of radios, like walkie-talkies. You want to check in on that, but at the very least, a CB radio is a good idea. And those of you who, and of course now they're trying to control ham radios and all that. So it's all to try to force us into this system. But there are ways to do it. You can buy a cheap set of small walkie-talkies, so that at least you can communicate with, say, your neighbors, maybe within a quarter of a mile, in case communications go down, early warnings, things like that. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Thanks for bringing that up. Okay. Windows is, it does these things. It tries to interfere and tell you to upgrade and upload all kinds, you know, how that just constantly is interrupting you. That's an interesting statement. Yeah, now they're saying that my bit rate's too low. See, didn't have a problem until now. We'll go with that later. I'll fix that again later. Okay. It's probably time. A lot of things are going on here now. Maybe I should just go. I keep my bit rate low because I never know what's happening upline, how much is being used, so I don't want to overload the system. But now it's saying that it's lower than the recommended bit rate. But it's still clear. I'm still getting a better signal than I did on the old system, so we'll just let it be here. It just wants me to, I think, bring it up. Yeah, it's starting to foul up now. Okay. I believe there is a thing, a seed of Cain. I do, and I believe there's a seed of God, and I believe that there's been, that there has been that conflict going on for a long time. I do believe that. I think most of you know that I believe in that. I had somebody the other day say that, accusing me of all sorts of nefarious things. It's interesting how that stuff comes out, and it's usually around. And I'll just say it, certain Christians or professed Christians who have some fanaticism to them. And that's unfortunate. As Jesus said, he didn't come to judge the world, he came to save it. Right? But a lot of people, just like the Inquisition, used it as their reason to hurt people and seize their hearts and minds rather than free them. That's interesting. The rough edge. He or she says, if you have Nephilim DNA, you might get a pass. Well, that might be another reason why they've been doing all this DNA testing. And I said this many years ago, that a lot of this that they were doing with taking the DNA from the babies when they were born and putting them in the blood banks is to identify the seed of God as opposed to the seed of the devil. And the devil will save his own. Yeah, that's why this whole thing with Malachi is so important about the Son coming with healing in its wings and not Jesus. It's not talking about Jesus. I've talked about that before. It's actually the word Shemesh for the sun and the thing in the sky, that somehow it'll be used as a transmitter to somehow heal us. So we'll see how that works out. I'm not sure. Where can you watch David Knight, L.M. Barker? Oh, well, he's on InfoWars. He has his own program, The David Knight Show on InfoWars. It starts at, I think it'd be 8 a.m. Central Time. And it goes until Alex comes on at 11 Central Time. So that's where you can find him. And he has his own, well, he did have his own blog and some other things. I think they have probably interfered with that. But okay. Yeah, you all have been talking, and it looks like, and I'm not sure how to refresh this on this particular program. I'm looking here, and I don't see it, so I'll check that out after I close down, which I'm going to do now, okay? I want to thank everybody for coming. This was just kind of an experiment with the new studio, and as you can see, I'm not technically proficient with it yet, but I will try to get that way, and because it looks like, the old YouTube studio is going away at the end of this month. So I had to force myself, even though I've checked on some things and looked at it over the last little while, I haven't really taken the time to get down to the nitty-gritty. So I will do that, and I'll be more prepared next time. Okay. Plus, we've been on for an hour. All right. I want to thank everybody for coming, and keep your eyes on the horizon, your ears to the ground, your situational awareness on high, especially now. Your governments are not your friends. They're showing who they are. Greg Abbott of Texas, finally, I think, realizing what's going on. They're going to release all of this week. I'm sure they're going to have some precautions in place. But I hope the things like the checkpoints at the state line and all that go away. That's really overkill. It really is. Plus, I want to, this is, you guys know, I travel a lot. I've got kids all over the country. That should not surprise anybody. Oh, that was another thing. I might as well talk about this because people say I try to hide it. So I'm not bringing this up. But those of you who don't know this for whatever reason and are offended by it and you want to go away because of it, well, this is a good time for me to encourage you to do that. Okay, so I'm going to do it. This is a good way to end, so that you'll know that I'm an open book. I had this person write me it was either in chat or it was in a comment that I saw. And I don't usually check the comments, but sometimes at the top when I'm looking at things, I'll see it. And this person says, I've researched you and I've found out all of your hidden things. You're not who you say you are. You're this man. And I did say the other day, I'm an open book. I've been a public person for at least 30 years. Actually, it's been longer than that. I was in the Washington Post, I believe it was. It may have been Washington Times. I don't remember, but back when I was like 3 years old, I was on the front page. In the 70s, when I was involved with a federal SWAT team that went after some people who were stealing explosives, I made the papers then. When I went and found out that the bomb placed on the igloo door in the south area of Tooele Army Depot where the chemical weapons were stored, when I solved that case and arrested the person who did it, it wasn't a real bomb, it was a hoax, and disagreed with the commander because they wanted to continue to keep the area shut down, which cost the government and the contractors who were doing upgrades in the area tons of money. The commander then tried to sue the contractor for the entire downtime. When I had solved the thing within 2 hours, had the suspect arrested, the evidence and all that, he told me to put the bomb back on the door. If you thought it was a real bomb, would you tell somebody to put it back on the door? Brought down the EOD to then dismantle it after we had already done all this. And anyway, I was subpoenaed into court to testify about all that. And so that's another time I made the papers, and that was international, as I recall. And then, of course, the situation when I was on the Murray Police Department. So all of you, put your hearing aids in if you need to, because this is to show you I don't hide this. It's just that I don't talk about it because it's in the past, okay? It's done. As a matter of fact, before I go any further, I talked to, I think you saw me do the song, it was a Merle Haggard song that my friend Ron and I did from his ranch some time ago. Well, we're going to do another one. We're going to do an Oak Ridge Boys song probably this week, and after we record it, I'll probably put it up. Trying to love two women at the same time, I think is the name of the song. That was me, and it's very true. That was the song that Oak Ridge Boys did, loving two women at the same time, or whatever it is. And I don't mean at the same exact moment. I mean, having, the one gets your money, one gets your name. Sorry. And I know a lot of people are just aghast. This is horrible. You mistreat women. No. So, I early on I found some problems with the Mormon Church. I had converted to Mormonism when I was in high school. That was my mom's idea. She regretted it the rest of her life. But I take my spiritual development seriously, and I found out some things, and I'm not going to try to justify it all. I'll just say that I found out some things both in the Mormon scriptures and in the Bible that talked about the plurality of wives. And yes, I did do that. So publicly, you look my name up, and you Google me, and you'll see not just the situation with these things that I do on YouTube, but you'll see all this other information. I don't hide it. It's just why be taken off the really important things that are happening today. So for all of you who want to point fingers at me, I'm admitting it openly, like I have since 1982. Actually, it was 82, late 82, early 83. I got on Phil Donahue. I was on ABC Morning News, Good Morning America, CBS Morning News with Bill Curtis and Diane Sawyer. I had international interviews from all over the world. I mean, come on. I'm not hiding anything, okay? Not at all. So yeah, I was involved in plural marriage actually only for about 5 years. The attacks from the state of Utah and the Mormon Church, who didn't mind homosexuality, didn't mind people living together. They just wanted to control your religious thoughts. That's what it's really about, your spiritual. They didn't care about what you did, as long as you didn't claim that it was because you were doing it for religious reasons. And I'm serious about that. I had police officer friends, I had girlfriends, and they were screwing in their police cars, taking them out to, whatever. And none of them ever got in trouble, although everybody knew about it. But because the Mormon Church knew that I was doing it for spiritual reasons, they were the ones that came, and some I'll just say some hypocritical Christians, okay, born agains. It was kind of a mutual thing from those two. But at any rate, I did do that. But man, I'll tell you what, I'd never want to do that again. It was very, very difficult. You have Abraham, David, Solomon, Gideon. Look at your Bible. Gideon had several wives. That proves that those men had some real, I'll just say, talents. Okay, and it's not unscriptural, and it's not. And you can disagree. I don't care. You'll cite verses in the Bible about a bishop is to have a one wife. Well, what it means is that the bishops have to be married. It didn't mean but that, I'm not even going to go there today. I'm just admitting to you, if you didn't know this, I'm telling you, if you don't like it, go away. That's all right with me. I'm not here to get followers or money, as you know, none of that. I'm here to try to shed some karma. It wasn't my plural marriage that I'm trying to shed. No, it's working for this evil government for 28 years and what I did with them. So at any rate, yeah, and what I do, and I'll admit this, I feel bad. And I wrote my former wives an apology, not so much for my stupidity and my naivete, but that I would assume that I could make them happy when they probably would have found their true mates. I didn't do it to hurt them, and I didn't force them. They all understood what was going on. They knew each other, all of that. They agreed to it by and large, but in the end, I ended up with Carol, and she was the one that, of course, died in 2008 from ovarian cancer. So that's the story. So don't accuse me of trying to hide something, or that you've discovered some horrible thing that I've been hiding for the years. No, I've been an open book for me. I've written 3 books. 2 of them were about my situation with Murray and the polygamy situation. One's called An Offender for a Word. The other is I Wed 3 Wives. Both of those are out of print. You can still find them on Amazon, used books, but man, they're outrageously expensive by and large. I wouldn't buy one. And then, of course, my 3rd book that I wrote was The Crimson Thread, The Struggle to Become Jesus During the Revolt Against Rome, which is really a novel form of historical events, is what it is. It's what I learned from my studies in Hebrew and in the events of the first century that surround the first century CE, 100 years before and basically 300 years after. So, at any rate, not hiding anything, okay? Actually, well, I won't go there. I am still like I was when I was about 25, okay? If you remember the story of David, he was an old man, and he had done some horrible things. He had of course, there's some possibilities about David and Bathsheba having met earlier in their lives, but at any rate, Uriah, his captain of his army, Bathsheba was Uriah's wife, but Uriah was so devoted to David that he wouldn't sleep with his wife. He slept at David's door to protect him. That tells you what kind of danger David was in. Talk about what happens to leaders. But anyway, David set him up, of course, and he got killed on the front lines of a battle. And then David took his wife, and of course Nathan the prophet was all over David for doing that and how horrible he was. Kind of like I'm after Trump all the time. Doesn't mean I'm disloyal to him. It means I'm going to call him out for doing what he did wrong, just like Nathan the prophet did with David. So at any rate, David repented, and his first son by Bathsheba died, and then Bathsheba bore Solomon to him. But the actual thing that he did wasn't. I mean, his relationships with women were not what God found fault in him for. It was a situation with Uriah, and then God called David a man after his own heart. Oh, that's kind of interesting. So at any rate, yeah, I think having been through that, it's let's just say everything works tip-top shape. I'll just put it that way. You exercise a muscle and it gets stronger. You don't exercise it and it goes into atrophy. And it's true for everything. Just let you know. And you can take it for what you want there, okay? All right, let's see here. All right, I think we're done. It's been an hour and almost 12 minutes. Thanks, everybody, for coming. I hope this was enjoyable to you. And we talked about a couple of funny stories. One, part of my life story, and then the situation on the military flight. I've got a ton of stories I can talk about. If I ever meet another lady, and it's not that I haven't dated, okay? I think all of you know that. And I'm not trying to find somebody. I'm not trying to find a Carol. That's not what I'm trying to do. But I did learn some things from Carol about how women really should be, which I'll be honest, the others didn't have. I'll just be honest about that. Not that I dislike them for it or whatever, but I found out what a real woman is like. And that type of thing I like to get back. Not the same kind of personality, okay? That's not what it is. But I have dated quite a bit, and one of these days, hopefully, the right one comes along. In the meantime, if this thing all goes out of hand and I'm encouraged by force or otherwise to leave this existence, okay, because I lost Carol back in 2008. So, yeah. I'm probably talking too much. So we'll go. If I can find it. Where is it? You know, that's another thing. I have a slightly different. I have two computers, and on this new computer, it's set up a little different than my other one, and so sometimes I'm not used to this one. I have to look for it. So thanks, and be ready. This thing is. I don't think it's going to get any better. We've moved to the 1st of April now. I got the emergency notifications, you know, that you get on the phone that says that the state is now going to not open until the 1st of May. Again, who's pushing this? Well, Trump did it in his deal there, right? So he wasn't serious about opening on Easter. He's been convinced, or it's a plan to go along with Fauci and Birx and all these people. And I wouldn't be a bit surprised if when the 1st of May comes, if they even open it up for a short time, that it's going to be a short time. But I'm not even sure they're going to do that. They've got us by the short hairs now, so get yourselves ready. You can see the stores and what's happening all around you, okay? The police are going totally out of their minds and being Nazi SS, Gestapo. The governor can suspend your rights in an emergency. No, he can't. No, she can't. Hopefully there are attorneys like Barnes and these others who will sue the hell out of these politicians and these cops. Okay, you know how I feel about that. I'm not going to get angry at the end of the program. We'll just celebrate that, you know, here we are. I'm sad about it. But maybe a new world's coming that the evil will be eradicated and the earth can receive its true glory. You're not going to go anywhere else. You know, the earth shall pass away, heaven will pass away, but God's word will never pass away. It doesn't mean this physical location. Okay, it doesn't mean that. It's not talking about that. There are going to be changes. but your next life won't be that much different than this one, except there won't be all this horrible stuff going on. There'll be an illumination, not Luciferian type. Okay. Okay. Well, that's all I'll say. See you next time.